There's one rule and one rule only. And that is the more love you show the ladies, the more they show you. And that sort of is what we use as our standard to get the audience involved. Burlesque is not a passive art form. You don't sit and observe. It's not a movie theater. You're not watching Netflix. You have to participate, whether you're performing on stage or in the audience. We all work together.
That was Trixie Minx, dancer, producer, and New Orleans-based burlesque luminary. In this episode, she brings me up to speed on a whole bunch of things and challenges quite a few assumptions. Just keep on listening. 2, 3, 4. Hey there, podcast people. John here, and you are listening to Season 2, Episode 5 of Make Moves. You know, I really think this is a funny episode. Trixie and I had a perfectly lovely conversation, but at moments I was flashing back to being 13 and wondering, is this really happening? Is a girl talking to me? I think maybe you'll get a kick out of it. Maybe you'll hear it in my voice as it's happening in the interview. If you are new to Make Moves, I hope you will hit subscribe, rate and review the show if you enjoy it. Definitely look at some of the other episodes that are out there. There's a lot for everyone. And if you're a seasoned listener, hey, thanks for coming back. We really appreciate your loyalty, and thanks for being part of the Make Moves community. Okay, well, I'm going to check in with everyone about the halfway point and play a little bit of music. But for now, I'm going to turn off my mic. You turn on your ears, and let's get to the interview. Hey, Trixie, welcome to Make Moves.
Hi.
So I kind of want to do a rough job of introducing you. You are Trixie Minx. You are a burlesque performer and producer. You've worked all over the place, U.S., Europe, Australia. I Googled burlesque because I was curious, as usual, and there were 13,400,000 entries in Google. It started with a Wikipedia post, and then a movie with Cher and Christina Aguilera, and then there was 13,398,000, like a bazillion other entries after that. And I thought, before I get too far ahead of myself, and I think the audience out there listening would benefit from this, can you explain how you see burlesque? Like, what is the point of it as an art form? What is it? How is it different than other forms of exotic dancing or something? Like, how do you see it? What is it?
Well, okay, so burlesque to me is the art of tease, and it's a collaborative art form that's normally performed by an individual performer, where it combines costuming, choreography, makeup, hair, like the dance itself, everything coming together for a person to perform to disrobe a garment. But the thing is, it's hard. It's a very hard thing to explain, very easy when you see it. Burlesque dancing is the art of tease. Even though one person performs it, I do think it includes a lot of other people because there's so many different elements involved. I think that from the start of the conception of the act to the creating of the costume, the selection of the music, and sometimes you get to even work with live musicians, which is ideal, creating the choreography. And that's also sometimes that is shaped by the spaces you're performing in as well. Like if you have spaces where you have tons of space, you can do so much more versus where if it's small, you have to get a little bit more creative. If there's any props involved, and all that ultimately coming together to a stage performance, which then incorporates so many other people, from advertising, promoting, working the actual venue to get somebody to see the act itself.
I see.
So I know I'm a little bit all over the place, but it's funny because it's like, to me, simply put, burlesque is the art of tease, but there's so much more. That's like literally like just opening the can of worms, like just a little.
Well, I think that's a good anchor point for us to sort of hold on to, I guess, as we go through this. So you mentioned a little about the spaces you work in. Can you tell me a little about the places where you do this? I mean, you're all over the place. So, where do you do it? And if being in a different city, or like, are there different city cultures that affect how you do it? Or how's that go?
Okay, well, see, I primarily perform in New Orleans, Louisiana. That's where I'm based. I have a company called Trixie Minx Productions, and we do 4 regular running shows there. One of my longest running shows is actually it's beautiful and important to me because it's part of the burlesque movement, like I don't want to say the resurgence, sort of what brought it back in the late 90s. It used to be called the Shim Sham Club, but now it's called One-Eyed Jacks. And I've been doing a monthly there for going on 12 years. I do a show called Fleur de Tease. That's amazing because we have an actual old theater, like speakeasy style, where we have red velvet curtains, we have a backstage, we have lighting, we have seating. It's very beautiful. However, I also do these 2 smaller shows with live jazz bands. One of them is Burlesque Ballroom at the Royal Sonesta. The other is Burgundy Burlesque at the Saint Hotel. And that one has been really awesome too, because we were able to take that over to Europe and actually headline a jazz festival. We incorporated like performers, dancers in with the music. So I thought that was really cool. And those venues are catering towards music because they are primarily jazz venues. So the stages are much smaller, they're carpeted, the room is a little bit more intimate. So the dancers are somewhat limited on their full range of motion, perhaps. But with the limitations becomes innovations. And so you create different movements and styles and ways to connect with the audience. And my last show that I do, that's weekly, I just started, is Bourbon Boylesque, and that's with just boys. That's at Oz, and Oz is a gay nightclub. Mm-hmm. And so their stages are designed more for drag queen performance. So they have great lighting, great sound, great presentation, but there's not necessarily a backstage behind the stage itself. And then the flooring of the stage is great, but again, it's not really designed for a dancer. It's more for presentation in my mind. But that venue was so great. They actually went out of their way to incorporate aerial rigging because I requested it to enhance the show. I thought that was really cool. But from there, like literally, I've performed on everything from a postage stamp to the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
It's serious. Like, I'll never forget my first, it's normally private events where you're in these sort of odd spaces where somebody has an idea and they're like, we really want to incorporate burlesque into this whatever, whether it's a birthday party or, an art function or fundraiser. And I'll never forget the first time I did a crawfish boil, actually. And they're like, no, we built this stage and I was like, no hate on the crawfish boil, but like they're typically outside during the day. It's sort of messy. And they're like, no, we built a stage. It's during Jazz Fest. We want it to be a real performance. I'm like, great, this is going to be awesome. And the stage had been completely filled up with the musicians and the band. So there was nowhere for me to dance. And as I'm walking in my high heels, they're going through the grass. So like, I'm literally like sinking into the ground.
Sinking in, yeah.
And this is just walking. This is not even to perform. And I'm like, so I was like, oh, maybe if I just dance on my toes, it'll be fine. And I got to the point where like I took about 8 counts into my song, and I was like, this isn't happening. And I had to kick off my shoes and dance like in bare feet in the dirt. It was very funny. But then again, that's, you put that next to getting the opportunity to perform at the Kennedy Center, which I was with Preservation Hall and all these other really beautiful, accomplished musicians and performers. And that's a formal theater, in fact, it's like there are multiple theaters within this organization. And it was gorgeous, beautiful chandelier, seating, the full stage, lights, you name it. So yeah, I pretty much, I always say, if you can dream it, we can do it. And so that's sort of how I feel. Like, I'm down to dance wherever you're down to have me.
Oh man, that's awesome. It's just the idea of, watching you make do on the postage stamp barefoot. That's hilarious.
Okay. So I have to come back again. Like, sorry, I tend to get long-winded. And that's partially the fault of ballet and dance in general. So dance is an expression of movement, right? Uh-huh. We use our bodies as tools. However, in dance, we don't use our voice. So like, I've been dancing since I was 2, so I have a lot to say, and I don't get an opportunity to say it through my words. Like, it's always through movement. So now that you're giving me the chance, I won't shut up. I'm sorry.
This is why I do it. I just want you to know, this is why I do it. There's a lot of people who invest their whole lives and no one ever really asks them, why do you do this? What's this all about? So yeah. I'm honored you're doing it. So don't be self-conscious with me. Yeah. So I want to ask you, I know the age old saying, know your audience. Like who exactly is your audience, or is there some kind of broader burlesque audience? What does it look like?
Well, I guess the audiences change. We talked about this briefly in different cities as well. In New Orleans, the audiences are predominantly female and special occasion events like celebrations. So, for example, we get a lot of people that are coming out for bachelorette parties. We do have bachelor parties, but they tend to use a burlesque show as a starting place and then go off and do something else, whether it is exotic dancing or just general drinking, or it doesn't matter. But we also birthday parties, anniversaries, all that fun stuff. But I think the reason, and a lot of people don't realize this, the majority of people at our show are women. We're about, I would say 50% of ticket sales are female, like just ladies coming with groups of ladies. About maybe another quarter of it are couples. And then probably the last quarter is men coming, like, with friends or just in general as a group. Yeah,
it's totally counterintuitive to what I would have guessed, but you live it. What's that?
Why? Well, but why is it counterintuitive? That's
yeah, it's a good question. I don't know why. It just it seems counterintuitive to what I would expect, but you live it and you see it. And
well, I think the reason why it's counterintuitive is that when people think burlesque, they think strip tease, and they associate that with stripper, with exotic dancing, with that is something that's traditionally done for a predominantly male audience. However, burlesque, while it is strip tease, we are stripping. It's so much more. It's very much female empowerment. Again, it's very artistic. There's a lot of collaboration. I mentioned this before, but it's not merely somebody coming on stage, taking off their clothes and then dancing. There's act conception, even custom created music or music selection alone. We're trying to create a story or something that's more than just a striptease. The striptease is the medium in which we do the performance and tell the tale, but that's not why you're coming. Right. You're coming because you want it all.
Oh my God. Don't ever encourage me to want it all. So I looked on your website. I know you're known for being comic inspired.
Yeah.
And I looked at your website. It looks like you're folding in some elements of Jewish faith. I'm not sure about this. Is any of that what is that common, or what's that all about? What?
Well, I started doing burlesque about 12, 13 years ago. Prior to that, I was a ballerina. And I've always been a dancer, but I'm also Jewish. And it's not really that's never really had any sort of, it hasn't influenced my dancing until I got to burlesque, which was actually sort of funny. So, I'm sorry, I keep bumping the computer. So in burlesque, when you are a dancer, a ballet dancer, you are a tool for somebody else's vision. So meaning you're the body, but somebody's creating the choreography, somebody else is designing the costume, somebody else is picking the song. So you have no choices in the matter of the art creation. You merely are what the choreographer is using to express. However, in burlesque, you have complete control. And so my first Christmas show that we did, or I should say holiday show, we were creating this holiday show, and all these girls had these beautiful acts about Santa baby and it's cold outside. And I'm like a Jew from Miami, I don't have any reference points for cold. I've seen snow a handful of times. I hate it. Not good. I never had Christmas. I always wanted it desperately. And the only thing that I had that was a holiday themed tradition in my life was Nutcracker and Hanukkah. And so I started thinking about it. I was like, well, rather than just do a Christmas themed act, which has I have nothing to contribute to it, why not do a Hanukkah themed act? And I found a song, and it was just basically, the song was sort of poking fun at the stereotypes of a Jewish American princess. And I figured, well, why not play the part? Like I don't consider myself one, but I love the idea that I could be one for, 5 minutes on stage. And so while everybody's coming out in a beautifully Rockhead inspired and fur-lined sparkles, I come out in a little pretend Chanel suit, with a giant dreidel, and I spin that and twirl tassels, and it's fun. That's actually something we didn't talk about. Burlesque. Well, to me, the definition is the art of striptease. The actual root of the word burlesque comes from the Latin burla, which means to joke or to poke fun at. So there's always been these comic roots historically with burlesque.
I see. Okay, well, I guess that makes sense then. It fits into sort of the larger narrative of what this is all about and where it came from. Although I have to say, I'm tickled by your contribution there.
Are you Jewish?
Well, I think maybe by lineage, I'm sort of I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on air to everybody, but I sort of believe in a larger power, but it is completely devoid of doctrine. So I can't say I'm Jewish. I mean, I think you follow your mother's lineage to figure out if you're Jewish. So technically I am, although my grandmother, who lived to be pretty late in her 80s, said, I'm an independent thinker. She was sort of like a cranky, stern woman who would not affiliate with anything. So, I think by lineage, yes, and by spiritual guidance or culture, no. But
well, again, that's sort of my thing too, by lineage and by performance, totally. It's funny, I practice more Judaism on stage than I do in my personal life, which is sort of silly. I truly believe, and this is completely off topic, but as long as you're a good person, you treat other people well, religion is more just sort of guidelines for that. That's ultimately, what the guidelines are all trying to say, no matter what you believe in.
Yeah. I've had similar conversations with some of my very conservative friends who, basically, I've seen a lot of religious organizations do really good things, and they've also done really bad things. So if you could just sort of pick out the good things and cling to that, that's, I don't know, maybe that's the best part of what they have to offer. But hey, who am I? I'm I'm just me. That's my opinion. I'm sure they would not like it if I tried to tell them. Let me ask you the name Trixie Minx. What's that all about? Where'd that come from?
Well, admittedly, Trixie Minx is not my Christian name. Sorry, I had to. You set me up. No, okay. So in burlesque, it is professional and expected to have a stage name because it's so hard to describe. It's so easy to do and to understand when you see it. You're trying to create a fantasy, or not, even if it's not a fantasy, you're just trying to create something that is larger than life. That is, if it is real, it's real to the extreme. It's whatever you want it to be. For me, Trixie is my best version of myself. And I had gone into this show and I still wasn't even sure if I was going to do it. I was like, I don't know about this strip thing. It seems sort of shady to me. And we had to take pictures, and the producer of the show was like, you really need to figure out a name because we have to introduce you as something. And I had tassels, so he had suggested it start with a T. So there could be this alliteration in the introduction, whoever, the tassel twirler. So I was like, all right, it's going to start with a T. And as I'm doing these pictures, these promo pictures, this guy is taking the pictures, just stops and he pulls away from the camera. He goes, oh my gosh, looking at you just reminded me of this old movie where this guy just told this lady, you're a crazy Minx. And as soon as he said Minx, I was like, oh, I'm Trixie Minx. It hit me like a ton of bricks. It was just incredible. And I have never felt so much like myself as I have as Trixie Minx. And as I mentioned earlier, well, for some people, it's about creating a character. For me, I feel like Superman and Clark Kent. I'm the same person both ways, but when I have on, the sparkles and everything else, I am me unfiltered, 100%, just joy and love. And so Trixie is my sort of vehicle to do that.
Huh. That's interesting. So I'm not even sure how to dig into this question, but it sounds like, the universe doesn't want, it feels like this opened a door for you to be the more complete version of you.
Oh, totally. For me, as a ballerina, you have to understand from the time I was 2 till I was 21, it was beyond a passion. It was an obsession, and one done lovingly so. And I think this is for most young athletes and dancers, and you have a very short shelf life, and so you have to give it your all. And gymnasts are another perfect example, but you live and breathe this art form. And for me with ballet, I wasn't naturally inclined for it physically, meaning while my heart and my mind wanted nothing more than to be a ballerina, my body naturally was curvy. And when I say curvy, I mean there was a point where I was very, very thin, and I still had hips and a bust, and I was never good enough, and it was always this this sort of road towards trying to achieve an unachievable goal of perfection. And to me, it was a very worthwhile endeavor. However, unfortunately, I injured myself along the way. I ended up with eating disorders along the way. And at the end of the day, I was a very broken person because the one thing I wanted, my body physically couldn't do as well as it needed to be done, on a super, super professional level. And becoming Trixie allowed me to be okay with me. And the act of disrobing for people and having them celebrate, not just clap, but literally they're cheering, they're saying, do it, come on, go for it. And it's not about financial gain so much as it is about the act of we're working together. There's the performer and there's the audience member, but a true burlesque performance should include them both. It's a collaborative art form. The audience should encourage the performer to disrobe or not, or do it, or, there should be a catcalling. There should be an energy exchange, and doing that over and over again, and seeing people, and also the idea of when you do create a burlesque act, I have the choice. I don't have to be a core of girls. I don't have to be a flower. I can be a bee, I don't have to be a swan. I can be Big Bird, and these are all true things. It's crazy, having that full artistic control, making choices, and then being celebrated for those choices, and encouraging other people on that path has been incredibly rewarding.
Huh. So I kind of want to ask that. Well, you kind of hinted at this already, but I want to ask the next question. It's I want to ask it two ways. One is a little bit professional, and one is on the personal side. I'm sure the answer is intertwined. But so how exactly do you wind up? I mean, it sounds like you started out as a dancer.
Yeah.
But how do you wind up in this sort of offbeat path? And then, you mentioned personally, there's some things that this just allowed you to become you. But how does all this come together? So you transition out of sort of the classical life. You're no longer trying to be a ballet dancer, but then what?
Exactly. I was going to say everybody comes to burlesque through different paths. So some people come from I have over 100 performers I work with regularly, and hearing their stories are amazing. And that's why I'm sort of giving you this note, is that, remember, this story is just my story. This is how I got to it. Everybody has a different version. But for me, I've always loved dance, and I've always loved movement, and I love the human body. And I always figured when I couldn't be a ballerina, the next logical goal for me was to work with bodies. I didn't want to be a ballet teacher. That wasn't really, because I felt like if I was going to be a ballet dancer, I wanted to dance. I didn't want to teach, I wanted to dance.
Right.
And so I went back to school and I became a Pilates instructor. I was always very interested in the way the human body moves. I was even, like possibly going to become a nurse. Like I was about ready to start doing schooling for that. And I moved to New Orleans by accident. It was totally an accident. I came to visit a friend, and New Orleans is really where burlesque found me. That sort of, that's a story. I'm sticking to it because here I was just taking some ballet classes, just because I truly do love it. I was, working with Pilates students and other instructors, and all these people from different walks of life in New Orleans kept meeting me and saying, "Hey, have you ever done burlesque? Like, I think you would be really good at burlesque. Like, just your personality and your history, like, it seems like something you would really like." And every time somebody told me, I kept telling them no. I was like, nope, not doing it. But I had literally an opera singer. I was a background dancer for the opera. She was like, "I think you should try burlesque." I had a ballroom dancer tell me I should do burlesque. I had a college student who was, we were in like a class together, tell me I should do burlesque. I mean, it's like all these people were coming out of the woodwork saying you should do this. And they had there was nothing for them to gain by me doing this. Like there was no other thing than them just being like, this girl needs to do it. And so I remember seeing the show absolutely being like, not doing it. And then I saw another show and I was like, yep, I'm never doing this. And then I saw a show in Europe and that changed my mind. I saw two actually. I saw Moulin Rouge and Crazy Horse. And those were full-scale artistic productions where the performers, and it's funny because most people call that cabaret rather than burlesque. But to me, I had never seen something done in the nude or topless and be done so artistically and so entertainingly. And just, it was a production. I was like, I didn't know you could do that. And so I came back to New Orleans and was like, well, maybe I'll give it a try. And even then I wasn't quite sure, but it was Hurricane Katrina that's what sealed the deal. Because after Hurricane Katrina, it was this moment where you lost everything. Nothing, and it really sort of helps you prioritize what's important in your life. And what I realized up until that point is once I stopped doing ballet, I was living life, but I wasn't thriving. I was just sort of floating through. I was doing what I thought I should do. And I was happy enough, but I wasn't nearly as happy as I was when I was performing. And it made me realize, like, well, if burlesque can even just extend my performance life even like another year or so, like, why not give it a try? And then I remember trying it and being like, I don't have to do this. I can walk. I don't, it's not a big deal. It's okay if I mess up this show and just bail out. Like, but the moment I hit the stage, the moment my foot touched, I remember it so clearly. It was like a fish to water or like a bird to flight. Like I have never felt so happy and so at home as I did on stage as Trixie Minx, even when compared to ballet. And it was shocking and it was inspiring to like know that you can always continue to like wow and surprise yourself, So that's how it sort of happened. The rest just, this is also really funny. I remember having to quit my day job to pursue my night job. It was the funniest thing. I got this offer to do a dance tour that was going to be at least a month, if not 2.5. I remember going to my boss being like, hey, I know I normally just do this nights and weekends, but like I need to leave work. And they were super supportive, but it was that was definitely the transitional moment where I was like, I gotta go.
And that's pretty much what went through your head. I like to ask people that sometimes, like, what's going through your head when you make that big decision to leave the old, like, let go of one rope so you can swing to the next one. But
it's funny because I never even felt like I was letting go. I always felt like I was pressing pause. Like literally I was like, oh, I'll be back. I'll be back in a month. Like I gotta be honest, like I had such little faith in myself at the time that it was so crazy. Or I don't want to say I had little faith in myself, but I had such little faith that it was possible to do this, or to even pursue it beyond like just to dabble here or there. And I even told my boss, and I was like, oh no, it's like I'll just be back. Like, is it cool? Like, I mean, I can quit now, but can I apply later? And they even told me, they're like, yeah, no, do it as long as you want. When you're done, like, come on back. And it's just funny. Like, I still, like, we're still in touch, and they have enjoyed watching me grow. But even then, now they're like, the moment you get tired of it, we're still here for you. And I think that also helps, having people to support you on both ends.
So also, I mean, you also work like as a producer and like a create. I don't know if the word is creative director, but like you're creative behind this also for other people as well. Mm-hmm. What is it like? What personal decision do you have to make that separates you from like being a performer to being a producer? Like, where is the switch? Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think the thing is that for me, there's not a switch. For me, it's like in my head, there's a million things. Like I always compare it to like driving a car. Like, so if you're driving a car and you're on a road and you're following directions, you go straight, you can stop, you can make a right, you can make a left, you can go backwards, you can go anywhere on the road. Imagine if you're in a car and there's no road. It's just open space. That's what it's like in my head. And so I have becoming a producer and a creative director was actually what allowed me to continue doing burlesque. I had performed as just a performer for about 5-6 months, and I was so unhappy because I didn't have creative control over the acts I was performing. I was doing the same act to the same song, every week for 5-6 months. And while some people, that's a really beautiful job to have. You have job security. You don't have to make a new costume every week, or you don't have to think. You go in and you do it. For me, it felt again like where I was with ballet, where I was a tool for somebody else's vision. And so I was going to quit burlesque entirely. And a couple of people had said, well, why don't you just try your own thing? And that's how the whole production and creative direction started. And with my performers, I try to cultivate, so we'll have themes, for example. So I'll be like, hey, listen, this is what I see for you, but what do you see? I always want people to be on board. And I'm very lucky that, I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm also a cast member for the burlesque show at the Borgata in Atlantic City. That's actually, I'm talking to you from Atlantic City right now. Very fancy. And with that show, one of the reasons I love performing in this show is because the producer of this show, I am just a performer, but it's produced by a gentleman that was a performer. He was a magician. And even though he has final say on act selection and music and stuff like that, he always asks me, he's like, well, what do you want to do? Like, let's talk, like conceptually, how do you see the costume coming together? Is there a music piece that you would like? And so there's a lot of back and forth, because I love collaboration, but this idea of just limiting yourself on an art form that's so limitless is silly. But yeah, how do I make the switch? I don't. It's like I'm on all the time. I'm crazy. Oh my gosh, I was in the airport yesterday on the way here, and all of a sudden I was like, Tina Turner. And I just started like dancing like in the line to get on the plane, because it just like hit me like, again, like I was like, what, we need Fringe and we need Tina Turner and we need like just for this act idea for a show we have coming up in September. Everybody thought I was crazy, but like in my head it was, and I literally was just waiting in line. It just happened. And a lot of times it works like that, like just it's a little embarrassing. Sometimes I'll see something, I'll just get so excited. I'll just start like, jumping up and down, like I'll pull out my notepad, I'll start writing stuff, or I'll start taking like a ton of pictures of a specific piece of jewelry or a color or like just something that inspires, and it's constantly going. I can't help it. I can't stop.
The way Harris sang, our love shortly rain. We are bound to forever on our way to for good. We never even argue. Our life is perfectly good. We're most happy couple, more than anyone could. On our way to forever. Our love forever. On our way to for good. In our
With permission of our friends over at Ropeadope Records, we are listening to Jim Stevens' Full Tilt Boogie Band playing the title cut off their 2016 album, On Our Way to Forever. Since Trixie is based in New Orleans and Jim spends a lot of time down that way, I thought it might be nice to feature a little bit of his music here in this episode. Maybe you want to check out Jim Stevens' new album. That's called Boxcar Blues, and he recorded that with his buddy Boy Wonder. If you swing by MakeMovesWithJohn.com and find the blog post for this episode, I'll make sure that there's links so you can check out both of those albums. Okay, happy listening. You know, I think everyone has a nightmare at some point that they're back in 10th grade and they're naked and the dream is actually kind of a nightmare because they're like the only one who doesn't have their clothes on. And then somehow by nature, I get the feeling like you're past this part about being comfortable, being exposed. So, I mean, I doubt you have nightmares about wearing clothes in high school, but I'm wondering, once you get past like these social fears of like public space and what's acceptable and acceptable is the wrong word. Once you get past social fears, I'm kind of wondering what's left to make you feel vulnerable or what feels like a risk now?
Oh my gosh.
Because like you are like, compared to what I do every single day, you are out there.
Well, it's funny because, That's really interesting. I never thought of it like that. Like for me, I also have a joke with my performers that I'm an extremely prudish person. With it's for a burlesque dancer. Like, I mean, look at me right now. Like this is by choice. Like I like, you know, I either dress in like a drag queen or like a soccer mom, and I like sort of more buttoned up things. I'm always like wearing underwear up to my ribs. Like I'll love to be, you know, like covered from here to here. But the funny thing is that I also think the body is beautiful, and I like celebrating that as well. I don't think that it has to be a choice of like, you're either completely out there or you're completely buttoned up. Like we have flavors, we have like choices. We can, today I want to do this, tomorrow I want to do that. With me, the greatest fear has always been to not be able to dance or move. My grandmother, and she recently passed away, and she was a dancer. She grew up during the Depression, and she really wanted to be a showgirl, but at that time it was frowned upon. And so she made the choice, like this was her choice, but it was heavily influenced by society and like her family. To be instead, she went into the war effort for World War II. You know, she was a letter writer. She got married and was a stay-at-home wife, and she taught piano and tap to children in the neighborhood. But it wasn't until she retired that she was able to actually start performing. And she performed with this group of retirees, and you know, then she eventually started up her own group. And I remember when she was dying, I went to go see her, and I was hoping to have a heart-to-heart, you know, like, I love you, or just some sort of like something. And that wasn't really the nature of our relationship. And not that she wasn't loving, but like, you know, she always said, I love you, but that wasn't really where, in this particular situation, she didn't want to die. She was holding on tight. And I'm hoping to have some sort of like, give her a sense of peace and like, tell her it's okay. And like, hoping that she'll be like, you know what, like, this is what I want. And the last words she said to me, she just motioned for me to come over and like grabbed me by the collar and pulled me in and said, keep dancing, and then just let go. And that was it. There was no goodbye. It's not like she died the next second. It's like that was it. That was all she had to say. And so for me, that's my greatest fear, is that the moment whether you have clothes on or not, that's a fixable situation. You can either add more or take some off, you know, anything in life, for the most part, there are things that can be done to fix it and adjust it. The moment you lose mobility, that's terrifying to me. Like, I mean, I'm talking about like not being able to move at all. Like, even though, you know, prosthetics or a wheelchair would be better than nothing at all. That's probably my greatest fear. is to just be like physically stuck.
Yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, we're all sort of limited resources, but the body is a limited resource. And it's something you need to get your vision done.
But also for like, it's just like some people, you know, the idea of being blind, like, oh, I can never see again. Like, you know, that would be really sad. But there's so many ways to hear and touch, and like there's all these other senses. But for me, this idea of not being able to move would just be heartbreaking for me. But that's why it's also really cool. I see these performers that, you know, like I've always thought there's a type of prosthetic leg, Victoria Modesta. Are you familiar with her?
No, but I will be soon as I Google.
She's amazing. She's amazing. She's a woman that, you know, had to have her leg removed. And so instead of letting it be a limitation, she used it as a form of innovation. And that's what I always try and do is like, rather than limitations, think innovations. And so she made her prosthetics like works of art, and she proudly incorporates them into her. She's a musician, like into her art pieces. And so like, that's really cool. So that gives me hope too.
Well, that's uplifting. Thanks for the positive reference point there. I'll have to go check that out. I want to circle back to something. I mean, you talked about, you know, what you do as sort of like a form of empowerment. And so I got to drill down on these questions a little bit. And I promise you, I'm not a prude, and I'm not doing this for insincere reasons. I mean, a little context. My mother was a Playboy bunny in the 60s, and that job was perceived that job was perceived as like some type of empowerment. I don't know if that's how she perceived it, but that was the rhetoric at the time. My wife is like total nudist. My 15-year-old daughter is deep into this like forward-thinking free the nipple movement, you know, all about equal rights and equal gender expectations and all this stuff. And it strikes me most when it comes to my daughter, because she's my daughter. But, you know, there's like this idea of empowerment. She's like, I just want to be empowered to have decisions and do things. And meanwhile, like her teenage friends that are all boys are like, yeah, empower yourself. Like, sure, definitely. You should free the nipple. That's totally going to work for all of us too. Like, get at it. And, you know, I'd like to think, because I'm a nice dad, that, you know, my daughter's, you know, hopefully making good choices there. But I wanted to ask you, like, it's like who exactly has the power, and like, are you claiming it back, or are you creating your own power, or like, what does that look like in your head?
Yeah, I think that
if you don't mind answering, please.
No, that's totally fine. I think with a lot of people, they're angry, they're upset, they've been held back, or just whatever for so long that's why it's super like aggressive. You know what I mean? You can still support, you know, free the nipple movement, or, you know, gender equality without being angry. And I understand where the anger comes from as well. What I like to try and do is I always like say, kill them with kindness, be better, prove that you are, like, I call it the revolution of self. This idea, this concept is, if you behave the way you want others to behave, and you treat others the way you want to be treated, that it'll create like a butterfly effect, and other people will see and be like, oh, that's sort of like, that seemed to work out well for her. Like, I should try that too. So that's sort of like my personal take on it. With empowerment, I'm a really hard worker. Like, I work all the time. If anybody thinks that, you know, becoming a burlesque dancer is easy, or like they have something else coming, I hustle my butt off. I'm working to make sure my girls have, like, you know, jobs and insurance and all sorts of other things. Like, I really go out of my way to make sure that people are taken care of, including myself. And I don't like to think that anybody has, you know, a step up. I truly believe that through hard work and determination, like, you can get to the top. But what's been very sad is that in taking the role of being a producer, and taking these more leadership roles with my performers, and, like, you know, trying to bring everybody up with me, I constantly see things from like, nah, that, like, I thought that was just like, you know, like a tall tale. I didn't realize people actually behave that way, or, people would really say things. It's happened to me most with regards to, we'll do a show, and after the show, somebody will come up to the host who's male, of the Flirty show, and ask him how he can book the show. And he will say, you need to talk to Trixie. Trixie's the producer. You should talk to her. And they're like, yeah. No, I saw her. How do I book the show? Like they can't even comprehend the idea that not only a woman, but a woman who is a performer, a woman who is, not in a business suit with a woman who can be seen as a beautiful person. And I'm not talking about physically. I'm just talking about or as a comedian, as a clown, somebody who can be seen as anything other than just a dude. That, it was shocking to me. It was very weird. I do think, I think that that's what sort of surprises me, is I never felt like I wasn't empowered. I truly, I have my parents to thank for that. My parents have always supported me, and they've always been like, you can do anything if you set your mind to it. So that was always my mindset. So I never felt like anybody was against me, particularly until I started doing these shows and taking on larger roles. And then I would see it. And that was really sort of disappointing. But again, the only way to combat that, in my opinion, is to be better and to educate. Because I find in a lot of, specifically with our current political climate, rather than fight people and say that's wrong and this is right, if somebody has an opinion that's different from mine, I like to ask, well, why? Explain. Okay, well, I understand how you can feel that way. This is how I feel and why. Can you at least understand? So that way, even if you can't agree, you can at least appreciate where the other person is coming for, and hopefully moving forward, make decisions that are more inclusive or helpful, or even with just that in the back of your head, knowing that's got to help. Otherwise, I'll go even crazier than we already are. Too sad to think of it any other way. I'm serious.
Well, that's a good lens. Thanks for sharing that. Hopefully,
sorry, I won't ever.
Hopefully, I can learn something. Hey, where'd you go? Oh, there you are. Here. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I'm curious. It sounds like you're nested in a network, either professionally or personally. What does your support network look like? Who are the people that you lean on professionally or personally, or who do you bounce ideas off of? What communities are you in?
We have so my company, Trixie Minx Productions, is like an umbrella for many shows, and in the shows, because what we are doing, again, even if it's a corporate event where you're just walking around on stilts, waving hi, that's one end of the spectrum. Then you have something else on the complete other side, where it's somebody that's, performing a piece about, the first time they ate fried chicken or whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter. But so there's all these extremes. So for me, my performers aren't employees. They are members of my family. We are a family. We are a family of friends, and we support each other. And I believe that you build yourself up by building up those around you as well. And so everybody comes to the top. So for me, when I have ideas, I almost always bounce them off my friends that I perform with. I'm like, hey, I got this idea. What do you think? And they do the same with me. We have regular rehearsals. Occasionally I'll just reach out with a text, be like, what do you think about this? But yeah, I mean, I guess that's how we do it. It's almost like a table discussion. We'll throw it out there, be like, hey, I got an idea. I want to be a cat, but I want to be a regular cat. I want to be an old cat. I want to be I want to do a dance, and I want to just cough up a hairball. What do you think about that? And they'll be like, that's a terrible idea. They'll be like, that's great. You should try it. And either way, I can make the choices to move forward, but I still have their, influences and opinions, present.
Got it. Are there people that helped shape your vision, coming up through this pathway, or people that you hope to be working with in the future? I know you have your family of friends and performers, but are there, can you imagine can you imagine who else, like, is there any value in collaborating with other people or things you would want to do?
Yes. Yes. So as recently as last weekend, a friend of mine who's based in New York, she runs this venue called House of Yes. And they do a lot of aerial shows and like sort of interactive performance art shows. She got hired to do an event in New Orleans. So we collaborated together to make, like, she had this vision. I was like, great, I'll get you performers and we'll do it. And it was really wonderful. That is something I do a lot. And even when I'm like in Atlantic City, I'm the performer for another producer. But like, again, I love working with other people. I get to work with other dancers that are not part of my regular thing, but it's all good. Sorry.
It's all right. I can't figure out how to turn the dinging off either.
Yeah, let me do it. Sorry, let me get this out.
Not now. Live recording.
Sorry. Okay, did it. All right. So collaborating with other artists has been something I've done a lot. Collaborating with the venues is something I've done a lot. And specifically for, like, we'll go into a venue. It's like, we want a show. It's like, all right, well, great. Well, the way your theater is staged, the way your restaurant is, we can do this and this, but maybe we can do that. But what I'd like to do, my biggest goal right now is to find somebody to collaborate with. And this, I don't know if this sounds terrible or not, but like somebody who is a financial backer, or like somebody who is more business minded, because there's all these things that I always say, if you can dream it, you can do it. I've been able to do so much stuff. And the only thing that's stopping me from doing more is truly budget. It's budgetary. And I think that if there was some person, business, venue, product, I don't even care what, I'd be so happy to collaborate with them just to take these ideas out of my head and make them physically real.
Right. Fully resource them so they can become what they need to become. Yeah.
Exactly. Because again, like we have so much talent, like we have the people who have the heart, who have the ability. And it's not even about having sparklier costumes. I'm talking about, like, again, when we collaborate with different venues and stuff, the only limitations are the spaces themselves. This idea that, like, well, since there isn't so much space here, what if we built, a pop-up stage here? Or what if we set up, some vintage staircase, like how they had in the old movies? Like, there's all of these other elements. So I would love to collaborate with somebody who has the means to take this to the next level. Because I think, like, when you look at a cirque show, what they do is absolutely stunning, right?
Yeah.
The performers that perform at cirque, if you take them out of a cirque environment, they are still stunning performers, but without that space, without that capability, even as simple as just having paid rehearsals, training, so that they can spend the extra time it takes to work on their art. Huge. Yeah. And you make beautiful stuff that way. One of my inspirations is there's a gentleman called Dragon, and he does beautiful shows. Like he did this show that was an entire water circus show, and the floor turned into a river, which turned into a pool, which then dropped back down to a regular stage, and then was like, but those capabilities, there's no amount of, like, just grit that's going to get it. That does need a little bit of financial backing.
Right. Yeah. That's not being creatively stubborn. That's a financial thing. Yeah. Yeah.
And insurance alone, like, just because that's another thing, like performer insurance. Like I'm pay for my performers to be insured, and it's so silly, but like, those are the small things I think hold us back from doing even bigger things. It's just small little bits that are all fixable. Everything's doable, but if we had a larger budget, we could do a lot more. So if you know anybody, that's the number.
Well, we have lots of listeners. Maybe someone out there will reach out.
Yay.
Speaking of listeners, if there was a listener out there in the audience, checking this out right now, there must be more than one. What if they wanted to get into burlesque? And you said everyone gets there a different way, but if they wanted to get into it, or they were interested in, performing it, or being more of a connoisseur of it, what would you suggest? Like, where would you point them? And I know there's a lot of ways to get there, but
yeah. This is my answer to everybody who's like, because a lot of people see a show and be like, I want to do that. That's what I want. The first thing I say, see as many shows as you can. Research burlesque. And a lot of people would disagree with me. A lot of people say, oh, we'll go into a class, or, just for me, I started at a time when there were literally only 2 other burlesque shows in New Orleans. And so I saw one, I didn't like it. I saw the other one and I didn't like it. And I was just going to quit. Had I not done my research and seen another show, like I didn't even know that type of burlesque was out there. There's a spectrum. So what you saw and what you liked so much in that one moment, there might be something else that you love even more, or there might be something that you absolutely don't like. So you want to make sure you stay away from that. But you should educate yourself on even just a little bit before you just jump into it, just to see if it's really what you want to do, or if it's just something that you think, oh, it would be fun to try once. I tell everybody it's, beef. You can have steak, you can have meatloaf. It's all beef, but there's different levels, and there's nothing wrong with wanting one or the other, but they're different levels of, how you would get to that point is different. So yeah, educate yourself, see as much as possible, do as much as possible, and then choose.
See as much as possible, do as much as possible, and then choose. Okay.
Yeah,
words of wisdom for pretty much everything. That applies. All creative risk takers out there, this applies to you. See and do as much as possible, then make choices.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I'm kind of like, I've worked through all my questions that I had for you, but are there any other things that you think I should be asking you about because it's important and I didn't think of it?
Let me see. I didn't tell you the rule of burlesque. It's this thing that we say in burlesque, there's one rule and one rule only. And that is, the more love you show the ladies, the more they show you. And that sort of is what we use as our standard to get the audience involved. Burlesque is not a passive art form. You don't sit and observe. It's not a movie theater. You're not watching Netflix. You have to participate, whether you're performing on stage or in the audience. We all work together. So that's something important to definitely touch on. I was going to say, see as many shows as possible, learn as much as possible, and try it. The worst thing that can happen is that you don't like it. It's the absolute worst thing that can happen. I don't think anybody's ever died from watching a burlesque show. And if they have, I'm so sorry.
They had a very weak heart. Yeah.
The show was so good, I died. It was so bad, I died. Oh my gosh, that's great. That's a great tagline. I don't know. I think that's it. If people want to find out more about me, please go to my website, trixieminx.com. Check me out on social media. But I'm a huge advocate for burlesque and, the art of striptease. And it's made me so happy. I love sharing that with everybody. So I guess that's what I leave you. The note I'll leave you on is that whatever it is that makes you happy, do that. Whether it's your passion or your career, it doesn't matter. But if it makes you happy, do it and share it. Simple.
All right, there you have it, folks. This episode is coming to a close. Big thanks to Trixie Minx for coming on the show. And hey, loyal listener out there, Gordon, thank you for helping me make the connection to Trixie. Without you, I couldn't have pulled this off. All right, listeners, thank you for hanging around. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I sure did. We should all get together in New Orleans and go check out some burlesque sometime. Doesn't that sound like a fun field trip? All right, that's a topic for another time. Coming up real soon, we have a new episode with Michael Nora. He's an actor. You've seen him on the silver screen, the television, the stage. The guy has done so much stuff, you won't believe it. I can't wait to share that with you real soon. But until then, please take good care of yourselves. Go out there and make moves.